Hello and welcome back to Season 6 of the MRX Lab podcast, the show from FlexMR, where this year we're on a mission to share inspiring stories, tips and tricks to help you put customers at the heart of business decisions. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by Jane Frost, CEO of the MRS. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you.
Can you just start by telling us a bit about yourself, your background, and your role at the MRS?
Well, thank you. It's always a privilege to talk about oneself, isn't it? But I'm actually a user of research more than a researcher. I've been in brand marketing all my life. And so I've been the budget holder. And I know firsthand that research can transform businesses, but it needs help frequently. And I've been so privileged to meet marvellous researchers throughout my career, and sometimes their daughters as well.
Brilliant. And just starting off with a really big, difficult question, but what do you think the biggest challenge right now is for our sector in market research, customer insight, whatever you call it?
I suppose I'm not allowed to say 42, am I? I mean, I think I'm going to go slightly bigger than you expect me to, because I think our real problem is how we define ourselves and how we talk about ourselves, to the extent that we tend to accept everybody else's label of us. Mm-hmm. And that can be qualitative or quantitative or UX or CX. And none of that is us. Mm-hmm. None of that is ultimately what our benefit is to the budget holder. Our benefit should be driving customer change based on the greatest evidence that can be delivered. Yeah, that's what it did for me. Yeah. And I think that's how we ought to define ourselves and not worry quite so much about one methodology versus another methodology. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that probably bores the budget holder sometimes. They want to know, what is the value for me? Yes. And I think the value is creating an intelligence asset that can change policies or change brands or change strategies. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it happen. Mm-hmm.
Love the phrase intelligence asset. Do you want to just sort of unpack that a little bit or broaden it for us when you talk about intelligent asset? What does that bring in if we're not talking about market research as a process?
Well, I think we're talking about market research at the core. Mm-hmm. But what I view it as is the creation of a capital asset. Yes. So just like the brands have been able to put themselves on the balance sheet, I think there is the opportunity for us to do that too. Mm-hmm. And I think it starts with the best customer intelligence, which is used appropriately by the client or the budget holder and turned into usable action through an empowered workforce. So it is actually almost the creation of a pyramid which starts at the understanding, converts to capability in the company or organisation, and ends up with a workforce, a talent that can deliver to the customer profitably or at less cost or whatever your strategic requirement is.
That's a really interesting way of looking at the process to get to the value and again, really putting the benefit and the value at the top of that. And in terms of that asset, what does it take in? Does it take all forms of data and research? Are there any limits to what we should be thinking about that defines that asset?
It's a very good question, but anyone who knows me knows that I have big ambitions. I also don't believe in self-definition, or letting anybody else define me. So I certainly believe it includes any form of customer data gathering, and that includes things like CX and UX, because there can be some pretty shoddy work done under that lovely banner. They need to behave more like market researchers that we understand, so that they're not, particularly in the tech space, there's nothing worse than something that's developed by a techie. Yes. And the other techie has said, that's great. Yep. Well, I'm not a techie. I can't understand these things. So I do think that's negative value frequently created.
And in terms of big data analytics, is that all part of that intelligent asset that we should be worrying about as well?
I think data analytics certainly are. I've never really believed in big data.
No, I know.
Because again,
difficult phrase.
Yeah, but semantics are important, you know. Big just means I need a lot of it.
Yeah.
We know they need smart data, which means they need us
Yes.
because we make that data smart.
Yes.
I used to compare it to something like a brontosaurus, huge body, small brain. Actually, either cut the size of the body down or expand the brain, and that's smart data.
Yes. Yeah. That's a really good way of rephrasing that data point. But it's great to also talk about intelligence as an asset and define it in its broadest sense, because I think that immediately takes this conversation away from research as a process. Do you think we've been overly worried about research as a process?
I think we have to get it right. But I do think we too have too much of an internal debate in public. These debates are great amongst ourselves, but they don't need to be public debates. And I do think that it's really important that when we are with our clients, our stakeholders, if you are a client, that you talk in their language,
Yeah.
not ours. Because if you're like me, when you're using some very clever data analytic tool that your agency has said is great, I need to believe that it's great,
Yeah.
but I don't need to know how it was done. But I need
Yes.
to believe it's great because my job's on the line when I sell this in.
Which is, again, that's a really interesting point, because he said that I need to believe it's great, which takes us into the space of what is the we've talked about what is the intelligent asset, but how do we believe that it's great? Does that matter? Do the organizations care that it's great or not?
Well, they certainly care when it doesn't work. I mean, do you remember that IBM actually sort of got its way through the laptop revolution by saying you never got fired for buying IBM?
Yeah.
I do think that we can use cleverness as a weapon, and we should.
Yeah.
I do believe that, well, I'll use an analogy. I'm on the board of the Lowery up in Manchester, and everyone thinks about the Lowery as sort of matchstick men and simple lines. But he only could do simple because he was a very good draftsman.
Yeah.
And he learned how to draw. So I think we all need to learn how to do the data stuff, how to do the communication stuff, how to do the business assessment stuff. And that is your key, if you like, for having the bigger conversations. And for me, knowing that my supplier was a member of the MRX. I didn't necessarily know in the time what that meant.
Yeah.
But that did mean I could go to my minister and say, it's all right, professional standards were always met.
Yes. Yes. Which is a key thing here. Is there it might be a controversial question, but is there a risk that organizations and decision makers, stakeholders almost cut us out or don't see us as important just because it's now data or data analytics, or not research process, or even AI?
Yeah.
Is there a risk that that other people think we're irrelevant?
Well, I don't think we help ourselves, back to my original point, but I do think that we've got to find the language that makes a difference with them. And we've got to emphasize the human in the equation.
Yes.
Because AI does some marvelous things, but we were doing a lot of them before with LLMs. So this is an expansion for us and actually gives us more opportunity. But we have to actually make the point that you are at risk if you don't know where your data comes from.
Right. That's an interesting, the risk in there. Let's unpack that a little bit more. What is the risk to an organization if we don't know if we just think it's got an answer for us and we don't worry about what's behind the answer?
Well, ultimately, capital expenditure that goes wrong, marketing campaigns that look like they're logically right and will go and bomb, and we all can name those. People's reputations, you know. A lot of the time, I used to sell in my reputation. Trust me, I've done it before. The minute your credibility drops,
Yeah.
you can't get your money back. I mean, I know it doesn't sound very businesslike, but if I'm asking for money that Shell never spent money on before, I needed to be able to say, trust me, I'll show you that it works.
Yeah.
And if I couldn't, I'd be out the door.
Yeah. So building on the credibility, then how do we build that credibility as an industry or as individuals, I suppose?
I think we could market our cleverness better and our curiosity better. I do think that we are allowing people to lead us into a transactional relationship rather than a strategic one.
Okay.
When I moved jobs, no research agency ever followed me and said, I know you're going to appear somewhere else, let's keep the relationship going. The ad agencies all did. So when I got a budget back, I was scrabbling around to find people where people had gone to who I knew, and that's not good news. So I think we have to build relationships and B, strategic relationships. And the key to that is, I think, curiosity.
Okay.
Because a good strategist knows that curiosity sometimes finds you the answers that you can't do just by grinding through numbers.
Again, it goes back to smart data, doesn't it? It comes back to people in their building relationships, but being smarter with the data, market the cleverness, as you say. Can you think of some examples in your own past as CMOs and decisions? Can you think of examples where you've sort of seen that and where you've had strategic impact because of the value, essentially, and how that value was built?
Yes, and I think value is the key thing here, because value is also taking cost out.
Yeah.
And people tend to think of research as putting cost in, but actually we can take cost out. And at one stage with revenue and customs, we took about £60 million out of a process. It happened to be the then benefits and credits process. And they sent out 12 pages of advice. And our research showed that the more advice you gave people, the less able they were to do the process. So we scrapped the advice. And then we worked out that actually we were giving the advice to the professionals,
Right.
not to the people who actually needed it. So that stuck as a cost saving. But much more importantly, everyone used to ask the question, why don't people pay tax properly? It's a law. So there are obviously people who are good, compliant, and bad, non-compliant. And of course, most people are non-compliant. We make mistakes. So if you redefine what people are going into the process with, how capable they are, what their attitude is, you can resegment into 5 or 6 segments.
Okay.
Take cost out of that heavy-duty compliance work and putting it into helping people to get things right.
Yep.
And that is still a case study in government for how you change an approach to strategy.
And that was based on data, evidence, and research?
It was based on a hypothesis, which we all create when we start a research process, and very, very good qual and quant.
Okay.
So and both are important, because if you're asking quantitative questions, if you get the wording wrong around tax or anything else sensitive, you can go off the rails very quickly.
Yeah.
So we actually went through a process of doing qual, quant, qual, redefine, quant before we got something we were really happy with.
Yeah.
And if I tell you that the questions they were asking before is, do you like paying tax? I think you'll know what the answers used to be.
Yeah.
Now we know whether people understand what they have to do.
Yes.
And that's a very different relationship with the taxpayer.
Yes. And in helping redefine that decision, I guess, in that organisation, what did you have to do in order to be able to be heard and for evidence to matter?
Well, technically, if you're in revenue and customs, evidence does matter, but they didn't have the right sort of evidence. You know, they just had compliant or not. They really just didn't know what was driving it. So I think the first thing you have to do is build relationships. And you build relationships using examples from other areas. So with operations people, when I used to be in Shell, I used to use Caterpillar trucks and things like that, things that they associated with, and showed that there was something there. You then tend to look for the apples that are nearest you that you can really grab easily, and you prove a small case, and then you make the bigger case. And it did take a couple of years before we started to get the investment going. But by that stage, when I had a budget cut, people were giving me back for research because we could prove a benefit in each case.
It's really interesting, really interesting. And coming back to the, again, broader definition from research to intelligence and data, for evidence to matter, for people to sit up and take notice, what do you think we have to do to build that case? And are there any risks to perception of quality in that?
Yes, I think that's two questions.
I think
really.
it is.
Yeah. So I'm just being sort of Monty Pythonist at you. I think the first question is a bit about marketing, and I think we've got a lot of brilliant evidence which we don't use. So when you do a research project, you generate a whole load of stuff which isn't for the client, but is actually quite interesting. We could use that to generate a conversation with people and say, did you know?
Yeah.
And generate the interest. For the second, I find it appalling that we have let the conversation on data quality slide as long as we have. And people quite understandably say to me, nobody's interested in process. People are interested, they have a good product. And I know where my M&S sandwich comes from, and I trust M&S to have sourced it and to have had happy hens or whatever. Many people don't know where their data comes from. They don't know what the process has been.
Yes.
And they haven't had the conversation about what do they want to invest in quality.
Yeah.
That's different from this is the process.
Yes.
We're now saying,
Yes.
how much do you need to rely on this?
Yes.
And I still find stakeholders who say to me, oh, well, sample of 100, we just go out the door and find 100 people.
Yeah.
That's our fault.
Yeah.
We need to be having the conversation and getting that education into that conversation.
It's a really interesting point, that redefining away from process to the value of the process, the value of the data, the output of it. Because you're right, we do think it's processed when we talk about quality. Even I'm guilty of thinking, well, does anyone care about that process? Because we should be talking about the value, the output from it. But it's like anything, if the foundation is weak, what's the quality of the decision? Do you think there's a risk to the decisions that organisations make?
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, of course, nobody ever admits to failure. But people are asking for investment in customer understanding or whatever it happens to be, and they need to feel that they can rest easy knowing that they're not going to be made fools of, essentially.
Yes.
That they can put people in front of their stakeholders and say, this will be a good conversation, oh, my boss. That when they turn around and they get some challenger say, did you get this right? They can go, yes, we did, because our people are trained and they know what they're doing. Rather than, oh, I better go back and check, you know?
Yeah. But again, it's linking back to your point about conversation before in relationship. Do you think this is just a conversation we don't have or aren't comfortable with having?
It's probably a little bit of both. I think we gave it up a long time ago, and getting back is quite difficult. But I do think we get back not through, as you said, the process discussion. We get back through the value discussion.
Yes.
You know, and I think things like representation in research can help. How much do you want to be able to know that you've covered these markets in creating your strategic decision or your investment decision? Well, if the answer is that market isn't important to me, that's fine. That's an adult discussion. If it's, well, I hadn't thought about that, that's not the right discussion.
Yeah. But again, really interesting point you make about value, because again, we draw back to process. And even myself, when I talk about data quality, I come back to the process of the collection, the brief, the cost, and I come back to a cost argument. I'm not in the value space at that point, am I?
No, afraid not. I mean, people frequently make that sort of mistake, though. They frequently are, oh, this brand has died because its volume has gone down and its price went up. And the answer is no, it just went over its value point.
Yes.
And you have to work it out for yourself. And you have to build the trust in the relationship. And relationships aren't just sending out a pitch. Relationships, as you know, your children, your cousins or things, they're about dialogue. And if we're not having a dialogue, we're not building a relationship.
Yeah. Is it something we're just not comfortable with, or just something when you say gave up, we've forgotten?
I think we misinterpreted, put all that process stuff at the back of the document, and we made people go through pages and pages. In those days, acetates and acetates, didn't we, in those days? But we forgot that wasn't the debate we should have been having. How I found some really exciting stuff out. How can you be reassured it's true? This is why, and we can talk more about it if you want to.
That's interesting. Again, instantly you've reframed that so simply and so quickly. I almost miss it. It's nuanced. But you're right. We talked about the data. Does that turn people off to our message if we talk about the process in that front part of that?
Well, when we do a long regurgitated thing that I, as a budget holder, didn't understand, I just needed to know it was good. I really did.
Yeah.
I needed to know that when I said, change the way you are programming scheduling at the BBC, my reputation wasn't going to go whatever over whatever as a result. And that I could, even if I didn't win, I wasn't looking silly in the argument. So I do think that there is another aspect to it. It's what I call the clever clogs aspect. I do think we have to seem like clever clogs. I do think that McKinsey's do it brilliantly. They produce wonderful charts, which when they reduce them to themselves are pretty pictures.
Yeah.
We could do more pretty picturing, I think.
Yes. Yeah, which is again, it's smart. Pretty pictures at the top, but underneath, it's got guts and depth.
And you can sell it in.
Yeah.
If you put it in front of the CEO, he'll go, oh, that's interesting. And you've made it up.
Yeah. But what helps us, I guess it almost badge that in terms of giving the confidence, the reassurance that this is better quality or data or an asset than a McKinsey.
Well, I do think there is an issue about that part of the dialogue which says, look, this is what we found out, as I said to you. But I think that when I talk to clients, they're looking for shorthands.
Yes.
What is the quick way I can say to procurement, this is okay?
Yeah.
So I'm not being idealistic. I do know that's what it means. I do know that if you've got the MRX badge when you talk to government, that is a shorthand for we're not going to get an insurance problem over here. I do know that if you put on the inclusion pledge, people are saying, right, we know you're doing something. So I do think brands help. And I do think your agency brand is important. 90% of it is a people brand. But the reassurance people have behind that is that you are committed to your ethical standards. I needed to know that when I was talking to ministers, that they said, how do you know it's right? X or Y is committed to the MRX Code of Conduct. Oh, well, that'll be fine. I actually once stopped a minister doing something which was particularly dodgy by saying that we were signed up to the MRX Code of Conduct and the professionals wouldn't like their integrity impugned. And she said, oh, well, that's fine. I thought, blimey, that worked. I didn't actually expect it to work.
It's brilliant. But I think, again, it's a classic example. You didn't expect it to work, but we're at risk of forgetting to have that conversation. Again, it's about value. It's about quality of decision. It's reassurance in the quality of decision, but focusing the conversation on those things, and behind it having that cleverness, and which is the reassurance, I think. And what is the MRS is doing to help us drive forward data quality initiatives? Because I've seen things around Campaign for Better Data and things like that.
Well, yes. There are two elements to this. There's a technical element. We do need to get some things right. And we are a leading partner in the Global Data Quality Initiative. That's brilliant. And it does give you a badge to say, we are at least ticking these boxes. And that's important. However, the conversation outside is the campaign for better data, because people understand that more.
Yes.
And so what we're doing with the campaign for better data, I hope, is giving you the playing field on which to start having that conversation, much like we do with government in getting the legislation right for you as a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is about, here's an excuse for you to go and start that conversation. We can't win it for you, but we can at least open the dialogue box.
Yeah. Again, a really, really valuable switch from, again, the process and the technical elements to the platform for the conversation and the reassurance for the conversation. I guess there's a theme.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a fault, conversation, because people are scared of AI. Mm-hmm. They do think they're getting a lot of smoke and mirrors blown in their face, smoke blown up their noses or whatever you do with smoke these days. But they think that, they're worried about that. So if you can have the dialogue that says, actually, we can help partner you to get that data that's going in there right, or we could help you judge whether this is an investment worth having, because here's some evidence we have from over here, which you could apply over here. Mm-hmm. I would be blessing you for that, because
instantly you've put yourself in the conversation as well in there. If there's, I'm going to come to one sort of final question here. If there's one thing you think the audience should take away from today out of this conversation, what do you think that one thing should be?
Well, my first, I'm just going to be very naughty. First is, who's the audience? Because it really is horses for courses. But if I was to be simple about it and respect your question more, I would say the opportunity exists, but you've got to use all the weapons in your arsenal, and you've got to tell a good story.
Brilliant. Thank you. It's a great point to end on, which I think is a fantastic conversation all around switching the conversation, really, actually, which I think is quite neat. So thank you, Jane, for joining me today and discussing these issues in more depth. And thank you to the audience for tuning in. We might be out of time today, but we'll be back next month with another episode where we'll be sharing more inspiring stories about customer insight success. But until then, I've been your host, Paul Hudson, and this has been the MRX Lab.